Oh, I got to get all the buttons right. Good morning. It is Monday morning, February 3rd. We got to start to the week, to the new month on a Saturday, which everyone gets excited about. Today, we're going to talk about tariffs, Cybertrucks, and Super Bowl ad prices. Because we have Steve Greenfield with us today, and I know he just placed his Super Bowl ad placement. What did you decide to run?
I took two of them. At 16 mil.
In a row?
Yeah, they gave me a discount. They gave me $1 million discount, which is very kind of them.
Very much, very much. So if you took the 60-second spot in the Super Bowl. Basically, it's going to follow up. What was that company that did the QR code? Crypto.com, was it?
Yeah.
Remember? I was like, that was probably one of the best executions ever. It was just a bouncing QR code, and they paid, I don't know, $7 million to do the bouncing QR code. And when they showed the data on that, it was staggering. Like the actual click-throughs were unbelievable. So, creativity won the day. We're kind of back a week back now from NADA. It's funny that like all the attention back to New Orleans for the Super Bowl, and we were just there. How did the show end up going for you? You had a special meetup with a lot of investors, which was really nice. And even despite the low attendance to the show, it seemed like you had a lot of people there.
Yeah, I mean, it was sad that we missed so many folks that at the last minute were forced not to come. But we had a reception on Friday night for our investors and our entrepreneurs, which is kind of cool because only once a year, really, we get those folks together. And then I was most excited Saturday morning. We had, I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but we had a reception for non-exhibiting founders. A lot of founders show up to NADA before they can ever afford to buy a booth.
Right.
And they're, just trying serendipitously to run into a few dealers. So we're going to try to do this. I think we're going to try to bolt this on. We should talk about AsudaCon as well.
Yeah.
Bolting this on, because I think that you know better than me, a lot of, entrepreneurs show up to your shows. And if we could have a venue for them just to get together, to learn, one-on-one time and maybe meet some dealers, in a very informal setting. I think it worked out very, very well. So we'll lean into that and do that, sort of bolt that on to a number of conferences throughout the year.
Let's talk about that, because we've been talking about what we're going to do the day before AsudaCon. Okay, and if you didn't know, it's a great time to announcement. It's almost like you segue that for us. AsudaCon tickets are live, by the way. You can go to asuducon.com, get tickets now. They are going to continue to go up in price as we get closer to the event. Basically May 13th through 16th. So the week after Mother's Day, just circle it. We have some really fun news we're going to announce. We have some international folks coming in, making the trip. And especially I think after NADA being a challenging spot, we've had a huge uptick in interest. So this one last year was really, really great. It was packed. This year we're opening up more seating, found out a way how we can feed more people. So there's really going to be a great collaborative spirit. And I love the idea of getting the non-exhibiting founders in the room, because if you think about what the list of non-exhibiting founders would have been like 5 years ago, it would have been pretty amazing, right? We're like, oh, I know those guys. I was just, I've been considering my first EV for like 2 years now.
You got to pull the trigger, man.
I know. And I'm
well, you can get a tax incentive. You got to go now.
I know. That's a great point. And so one of the vehicles that I'm looking at, we have some things going on at home, and I was like, maybe a pickup truck. I've always wanted a pickup truck, never had one. Mm-hmm. And I never would have thought my first EV might be a pickup truck, but my first EV might be a pickup truck. We'll see.
There you go.
But I clicked on the little recurrent. I was browsing on cars.com, actually looking at used inventory across like 200 miles. And I clicked on, always click on the little Carfax. I love when they have that available. And I clicked on the little recurrent button. And
nice.
I never clicked on the recurrent button, but we know the guys, we know the company, we know the story. And I was like,
and the investor, us.
I do know the investor. And I was like 5 seconds into that click, and I was like, this is amazing. Like the coolest thing was there's a little map when you click on it, and the map gives you, based on the driving range of the vehicle, how far you can go on a round trip and how far you can go on a one-way.
Yep.
And it was pretty amazing. And all kinds of battery information. I was impressed. This is not a sponsored ad. I was just really impressed.
Well, there you go. Scott's going to love you. So I'll report back to Scott Case and make sure he watches this segment today.
We'll send it totally unsponsored.
There you go.
And Marie on my team is going to be like, you got to stop saying stuff like that when there's no sponsor.
Oh, no, we'll get Scott to sponsor something now after this. Don't you worry.
That's actually our play. Okay. All right, let's get into some news today. Big talk is the tariffs right now. A fresh round of tariffs signed by President Trump, sending shockwaves through North American auto industry with 25% duties on vehicles and parts from both Canada and Mexico, and a 10% levy on Chinese imports. Automakers and suppliers both bracing for rising costs, potential production shutdowns, and some fierce retaliation maybe from some trade partners set to go into effect tomorrow, February 4th. And Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mexican's President Claudia Sheinbaum have pledged retaliation, which could further escalate the tensions. Automakers could shift production, but they face major supply chain costs and challenges to do so. They're saying, certain vehicles could increase in price by thousands, like a Chevy Silverado, GMC Sierra, Ram, a lot of trucks built in Mexico, Toyota RAV4 and Tacoma built in Canada and Mexico, and the Ford Mustang Mach-E, Bronco Sport, and Maverick, all built in Mexico. John Bozzella, we had a chance to meet and sit in person last week at Public Policy Day. It was amazing. President for Alliance for Automotive Innovation says, quote, "We support efforts to strengthen the U.S. auto industry, but across-the-board tariffs on Canada and Mexico will only increase costs, disrupt supply chains, and put jobs at risk. We want to work on solutions that achieve the president's goals and preserve a healthy, competitive auto industry in America." Steve, you in your weekly email, you had this front and center, so you obviously have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad because, the consumer is going to end up paying more for cars, and it's really going to put pressure in the short term on automakers and suppliers, as you note. But I mean, there isn't enough margin in here, right, for the supply chain to absorb it. The OEMs can't absorb 25% reduction in margin. The suppliers definitely can't. They run on razor thin margins as well, and there isn't enough time to push up MSRP on all the cars. And could you imagine that if tomorrow you go shopping for that car you're looking for and it's 25% more expensive? Right. Consumers are going to just not be able to stomach this and swallow this change as well. So I think that it's great. The challenge I have with this one is, I understand what the White House is trying to do. If you read the press release, it's around fentanyl and immigration. But, Mexico and Canada aren't going to have a lot of direct proof that they can reduce fentanyl imports into the U.S. So even if they wanted to do something about this and show the White House, hey, we've changed, we've done what you wanted, reduce the tariffs, there's no real way to do that in the short term. So I don't know how this is going to play out. But the stock market this morning is going to, get hammered. Yep. And I think it's going to be a tough day in the markets overall as this gets digested, with the uncertainty for how long this will persist.
Yeah. I do think about I was thinking about what the mix of products, because it's just it's almost it's not quite like gas prices where oil increases and all of a sudden the price of the pump increases, right? Mm-hmm. The gas that's in their tank right now, in their holding tanks, did not cost the higher amount. It's just an opportunity for them to reap some of the benefit. So automakers right now, everything on the lots, everything in process, everything that's completed and finished is obviously at the price it's at. Right. And depending on which manufacturer, that could be anywhere from a 22-day supply to a 120-day supply. And so are we going to start to see vehicles mixed in where it's two identical vehicles and one is 25% more than the other? It'll be interesting to see how that gets managed. I mean, hopefully, Trump is a very shrewd negotiator, and he has, he's a very much throw this big idea out there and execute on some of it in order to make everybody move. We've seen a lot of people move in some other immigration issues like Venezuela, Colombia. They kind of call this bluff for a split second. Right. And then he's like, okay. Right. And then they're like, wait. Right. And from that point, he's like, no, I'd like 2 coats of wax on that car, please. But to your point, what is the interim expression of Canada or Mexico taking increased efforts to address immigration or address fentanyl? Is that a show of force on the border from the other side? What is it going to take to actually do that? And like you said, super unclear right now. I think one of the things that does for us in the industry is it puts the auto industry in the center of conversation of what's going on in pop culture. So as always, when that happens, I think we have an opportunity to over communicate and over empathize with the consumer. and so what, like it or not, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a dealer, and I know a lot of dealers have been tuning in, think of how to be opportunistic around this. If you believe that MSRPs are going to go up here very shortly, it's a good time to get consumers closed on cars with the fear that they're going to be paying more in the next month or so.
Right, and the unknown, and it's tax season, right? Like there's actually not a better time to try to get people secured in and locked and give them peace of mind to know, like, hey, whatever happens, at least I have this.
Right.
I don't think cars aren't getting cheaper. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to be like substantially cheaper, but they could be substantially more expensive.
Agreed. Well put. There's the quote for the day. There's the quote for the day.
Speaking of substantially cheaper,
Stop.
Segue.
There's one truck that is made in the United States that will not be subject to any tariffs, but can we sell them? The Tesla Cybertruck sales are falling flat, forcing the company to roll out some heavy incentives, including free $6,000 wrap. So they'll wrap the vehicle for free. And they also introduced some new leasing options with demand far below expectations. The questions are mounting whether or not Cybertruck is turning into Tesla's first major flop. They launched the Cybertruck leases in the U.S. this month, starting at $750 a month, which is very reasonable for the truck. A move typically reserved for vehicles with slower demand. Buyers of Foundation Series Cybertrucks now get a free wrap worth $6,000 as Tesla struggles to clear inventory. So you can choose the color you want, and they're trying to think about what the consumer wants. Sales have been underwhelming. Despite 1 million plus reservations, they've sold fewer than 40,000 units, with some analysts estimating that number could drop to 30,000 in 2025, far below its planned 250,000 unit annual capacity. The rear-wheel drive version is coming later this year, and new federal tax credit eligibility in 2025 might help, but the impact is unclear because now they go, what's the $70,000? Is that the cutoff for a new one? Okay.
Yep.
So there you go. The Cybertruck. Do you have yours yet?
I do not. But you said just earlier that you were entertaining an EV truck.
Literally.
No, but would you consider one?
See, I was originally on the wait list. I signed up like real early, so pretty early on, I got the option to get one.
Right.
And I was thinking about like, oh, could I drive it for like 1,000 miles and then sell it for a profit, or at least break even?
Right. Yeah.
I decided to not pull the trigger on it, and the more that I see it around, actually, the less I want one.
Oh,
and the reason there's a couple reasons for that. I think the performance of the truck. I've drove one. I was down at Recharge, at John Foley's Recharge in Virginia. Got to drive one. It was awesome. It feels like you're driving a spaceship. It was way easier to drive than most people would think with that big truck. With the 4-wheel steering, with all the safety and it was actually so easy to drive, and it felt effortless to move that big piece of metal around. I live on a road, and all my neighbors are farmers. Right, I'm already the yuppie on the street. Right? So, what do I do for a living? I make videos, right? Like they have like combines and tractors, right? They're like 8-year-old kids are throwing bales of hay like 3 stories up into the barn, and here I show up in the Cybertruck. I'm like, I think I might need like maybe an F-150 Lightning, a little more.
There you go. Get away with it. Yeah,
there's a little bit of peer pressure there, I'll have to say. But I mean, I think $750 a month on a lease, especially with this tariff situation, that's pretty attractive.
It is. I mean, the challenge is going to be the residual risk, right? So Tesla's gone back and forth over the years with a high penetration of leasing in the early days with the Model S, down to almost no penetration of leasing now because they don't want to take the residual value risk. But remember, 3 years from now, when these Cybertrucks come off lease, no one knows what the value is going to be.
Yeah.
And it might encourage more people who otherwise would say, I don't want to take the residual value risk. If Tesla's willing to take it on a lease, then I might be willing to step up, buy a vehicle at a reasonable price, as you said, per month, and not take the residual value risk. What is the risk for the consumer? Well, the risk is for Tesla. If this is overwhelmingly positive, they might have all kinds of Tesla Cybertrucks coming back in 3 years in a market where there's uncertainty about what the value will be for those vehicles.
I think one thing that Tesla has been very good at doing is making very strategic changes in pricing, and they've shown that they're not afraid to do it very frequently. So right. I think they have a very firm control of the faucet. So I think they'll offer a $750 lease. They'll see what the responsive. If it becomes overwhelming, they'll start to inch that up so it's more reasonable. And before you know it, like it'll feel. So I think that they're very savvy, and just even knowing, our friend Jimmy Douglas and his experience at Tesla, he has iterated many times that they aside from what popular opinion might think, how they might think decisions are made at Tesla, like Elon walks in a room one day and is like, "Yo, we're going to do this." And everyone's like, "Okay, we're doing that." It's actually quite different. It's very calculated, very grounded in business and economic understanding of their business and threads. And they have a pretty tight handle on that little faucet. And I think we've seen that evidenced in all of the pricing changes that seem to happen on a whim. But it's not on a whim. Like,
right.
So I think they'll mitigate their risk. I think they just need to show some more Cybertrucks on the road.
Agreed.
Oh, here we go. Back to New Orleans. No snow this time. Super Bowl. What? You know what? What Super Bowl is it?
59.
59.
59.
Oh, that's right there. Super Bowl 59. Just around the corner. Advertisers are shelling out a record $8 million for a 30-second spot. Some big names are sitting this one out, including most automakers this year, while AI, snacks, and tech brands are dominating the lineup. At least 10 commercials have sold for $8 million each. That's up $500,000 from last year, the biggest move and the biggest price hike in Super Bowl history. 120 million plus viewers are expected to watch on Fox and Tubi, making it the single largest stage for any advertiser. Traditional big players like Anheuser-Busch, Pepsi, Frito, Taco Bell, and Uber are all in, but the only OEM to appear is going to be Stellantis, Jeep and Ram. I wouldn't have called that. If you said pick one, I wouldn't have picked that one.
No, exactly right. Yeah, well, they need to dig out of the hole, right? They've been challenged, so this is their opportunity to shine.
Absolutely. AI-focused ads and pharmaceutical brands are on the rise, while movie trailers and streaming services are on the decline. During Super Bowl I in 1967, a 30-second spot cost less than, I don't know. I was trying to compare it to something. Less than a Chevy Equinox. 37.5. 37.5 was the cost at the very first Super Bowl.
Wow.
So, do you watch the Super Bowl, Steve?
I do. I watch it more for the commercials. Sorry, I know you guys are Philly fans.
That's fine.
I watch it more for the commercials.
I knew if the Eagles aren't in it.
Exactly right. I think this is the one thing that resonates with me. So I think back to 2000, Auto Trader, and I was at Manheim at the time. So Auto Trader was a sister company. Spent $1 million for that Super Bowl ad. If you remember the time, it was find me a car, which used the Matrix technology to show, and really the coming out party for Auto Trader back then. But people thought they were crazy to spend $1 million on a 30-second spot back then. But there isn't one. Well, kudos to the NFL, right, for being so relevant and being like sort of in the sort of like the zeitgeist of like American, current day popular with Americans. But I think that the interesting thing is with the NFL and the Super Bowl is there isn't one other event, be it the Oscars or whatever, that people watch the commercials ahead of time. Yeah. And there's commentary on every single news outlet around who won, who had the best commercials, et cetera. This doesn't happen. So you may pay the $8 million for the actual spot, but then you get so much other impressions right before and after the event. Unless you have a dud, but then even if you have a dud, people will sensationalize that as well. So it is amazing, but it just shows you the power of the NFL right now in drawing the audience and how this has become, a badge of honor to have a 30-second spot at the Super Bowl. Always has been.
Absolutely. I think that's super savvy. Like, people release their commercials sometimes ahead of time. And what you also see is a lot of like people who didn't pay the $8 million really just tailwinning off the entire thing, because they'll say, oh, this is the Automotive Ventures Super Bowl commercial. Right. People do that, right? Maybe we'll make an Asodu Super Bowl commercial, right?
You guys should.
And it's not actually being aired during the Super Bowl, but when it shows up on YouTube, and it actually can just kind of get wrapped up in that cultural moment. Gary Vaynerchuk, legendary marketer, kind of like the visionary, he still says that Super Bowl commercials, he thinks, are still one of the most underpriced advertising mechanisms in advertising today, because of the disproportionate amount of attention they get for the price. Obviously, entry fee, you're going to $8 million for 30 seconds, and then your production budget is probably in the millions as well.
Oh, easily.
In order to produce it, and celebrity. But this is one of those moments where creativity is the differentiator between who wins and who loses. And it'll be fun to see. I haven't seen any yet, but this is the week where they all start popping up. And we get to have a lot of fun. And so if you're not happy about who's in the Super Bowl, that's fine. Just eat popcorn and pizza and all the other things. And then when the game stops, like check in and watch the commercials as part of the fun.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
You can join Steve. We should do live commentary on Super Bowl commercials. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. Look, whatever it is, first week of February, it's 70 degrees in Atlanta, 41 degrees in Syracuse, whatever it is where you are, go out and help some people.